Well, they just ended a major national dialogue that was convened at the behest of the President of the Republic. Was a means for Cameroonians to come together and discuss, according to the President's wishes, the problems that could lead to an end, that could bring the crisis in Northwest and Southwest regions to an end. Well, your question is whether that dialogue was actually the right solution. In my humble opinion, I think that if you are looking for a solution, you should first of all know what the problem is. If you don't know the problem, then you cannot find the solution. So, what is the mischief that the President of the Republic was trying to cure by convening the national dialogue? We all know that for the past 3 years and counting, the region of Cameroon that is now, the area of Cameroon that is now called Northwest and Southwest regions, which in actual fact is the state of West Cameroon, formerly Southern Cameroons, has been the theater of a civil war that is raging even as we talk. And what is the reason for that civil war? The population now wants to restore its independence by reason of the mismanagement that has been happening in this country since independence. Nobody has confidence in the Yaoundé government anymore, and the people think that it is high time that they should take control of their own business and run it themselves. So that's the reason why we have this upheaval that has led to an armed conflict, because violence begetting violence, the population responded to the violence that was coming from the government by violence, and we have now a theater wherein we have two military forces opposing each other: the regular army of the Cameroon Republic and the restoration forces of Southern Cameroons that has taken the nickname Ambazonia. The problem, in my humble opinion, stems from the non-respect of the provisions of Resolution 1608 of the UN General Assembly of the 21st of April 1961. What is this all about? You see, in 1959, it was President ASHU who went to the United Nations to ask for a plebiscite. He was the one who asked for a plebiscite, that plebiscite should be, the questions at the plebiscite should be whether Cameroon, or Southern Cameroons and Northern Cameroons should acquire independence either by joining the Republic of Nigeria or by joining the Republic of Cameroon. In response to that, the politicians of Southern Cameroon met in the Manfi conference, where they decided that they would table to the United Nations their own motion, which would be that the option to join the Republic of Cameroon should be removed, and they should be given the option to stay as an independent state. But that was overruled by Britain, that convinced the United Nations that both territories could not sustain themselves as independent states. So when in 1961, February, this plebiscite was conducted, and the North voted to go to Nigeria, and the Southwest, the Southern Cameroons voted to join the Republic of Cameroon. The Republic of Cameroon, which was already an independent state, jubilated and thought that that territory had been given to them by reason of the plebiscite. That is what prompted the United Nations to come up with a General Assembly in the month of April, on the 21st of April, to specify that the situation was not only going to be solved by a plebiscite, it was also necessary to put an end to the trusteeship agreement that was signed with between the United Nations and Great Britain in 1946. So that is the reason why this the UN General Assembly convened to decide the way forward after the plebiscite. And in that resolution, Article 2 acknowledged the fact that Northern Cameroon had achieved independence by deciding to join the Republic of Nigeria, the Independent Republic of Nigeria, and that Southern Cameroon had similarly achieved independence by deciding to join the Independent Republic of Cameroon. Where the trouble started was in Article 4, where the United Nations precised that the trusteeship agreement of 1946, wherein the United Nations handed over those territories to Britain as trust territories, will come to an end in the following manner. A, that Northern Cameroon was going to join the Republic of Nigeria as an independent province of the northern region of Nigeria. Independent province of the northern region of Nigeria. When it came to Southern Cameroon, they said Southern Cameroon will achieve independence by joining the Republic of Cameroon. Now, they prescribed the manner by which the trusteeship agreement was going to come to an end. And in Article 5, it was said that the government of, first of all, the administering authority, which was Great Britain, the government of the government of Southern Cameroon, and the government and the Republic of Cameroon should come together as a matter of urgency before the 1st of October 1961, and in view of implementing the policies, the way and manner by which the agreed policies of the parties were going to be implemented. Till today, that has not been done. I want to remind that when the parties went to Fumban, there was no agreement reached in Fumban. Therein, President Ahidjo presented to Foncha the draft federal constitution, which Foncha hid from his ministers and sent to Britain on consultation. Ahidjo convened the Yaoundé constitutional talks, where the British attended with the delegation from Southern Cameroon, and it was the British who said, you cannot discuss any constitutional talks without having satisfied the provisions of Section 5 of Resolution 1608, which clearly provides for a union treaty between the two states to be supervised by Great Britain. Ahidjo did not agree with that, and after the talks, Ahidjo simply decreed his draft constitutional federal constitution into application. And that is how we came about having the Federal Republic of Cameroon, by virtue of a constitution that was single-handedly signed by Ahidjo. Foncha signed nothing. So we all know what that is. In constitutional law and as in international law, that constitution was a complete nullity. And everything that has been built on a nullity is a nullity. Today, the problem is that West Cameroonians are today aware of the fact that their state has been swallowed up by their brothers, and that is why you have people in the bushes with guns trying to restore the independence of Southern Cameroon. So that is the problem. Now, so put was the national dialogue convened by the head of state in Yaoundé the right solution to the crisis? We want to say that if the problem is the absence of a treaty finalizing the process of reunification, how can a national dialogue convened by one party solve the problem? Clearly, on the table, we are supposed to have two parties. And if you don't believe me, during the national dialogue, the United States ambassador to Cameroon issued a press release wherein he said, we have noticed that some people are mistaken as to the reason of our presence here. We are reminding you that we are simply neutral observers and a friend to Cameroon. It is true that we have been asked to play a role, but we want to say that we can only play that role when both parties, when both sides must have asked us so to do. So that's the first time you heard somebody talk of both sides. After that, you see that after the national dialogue, the European Union has come out with its own resolutions to say that dialogue was just a first step. They should now sit with both sides to talk the real dialogue. So people who think that West Cameroon was not a state should open their eyes. West Cameroon has a constitution that was led, 1948 Macpherson Constitution. It had a well-defined territory that was defined in the Treaty of Versailles, 1919. It has a population that is clearly defined. It had a parliament that was made up of the parliament and the House of Chiefs. It had a government. It had all the institutions of a state. And if you look at Resolution 1608, it clearly talks of the government of Southern Cameroon. You cannot say it was not a state when United Nations itself talks of the government of Southern Cameroon. I want to remind African state to have a democratically elected government in 1948. And then in 1943, Southern Cameroon slammed the doors of the Eastern House of Parliament in Enugu and created and ran their own House of Parliament in Buea with a House of Parliament and House of Chiefs. And that continued till 1961. So, whatever has happened since 1961, by the putting in place of a federal republic, cannot be the answer. You want to ask the question, can two independent states live together? Yes, it is possible. In constitutional law, as in public international law, it is very possible. Two independent states can come together in what we call a confederation. It's very possible. So what ought to have been done in 1961 was the creation of a confederation. That was not done. So even the federal republic that was put in place was improper in the eyes of constitutional law and international law and public international. So we think that if somebody intends to do the right thing, that right thing can only be the finalizing of the reunification process by signing the treaty that is prescribed in Article 5 of Resolution 1608. No amount of talking by one side will solve the problem, because today everybody is aware that we are not talking about disunity of Cameroon. We are talking about putting in place institutions that are going to guarantee the rights of both states that came together in 1961. So far, we are seeing only Republic of Cameroon. And when you follow what the government is saying, it looks like to them, Southern Cameroon disappeared in 1961. No, sir. We don't have any legal instrument by which the independence that was recognized by United Nations in 1961 has disappeared. There is none. We want to remind that 1961 constitution, that federal constitution, was illegal. No constitution is decreed. All constitutions are voted. They are laws. They are voted. And since we are talking about two states, that constitution ought to have been voted by the assemblies of both countries and ratified. That was not the case. So there is no legal instrument that is binding as of today on Southern Cameroons that later became West Cameroon. So we think that the Grand National Dialogue, as the European Community rightly states, was a first step. Let us say Republic of Cameroon came together and harmonized its views that will be used in the dialogue that will be organized with the Republic of West Cameroon or Southern Cameroons. But as a solution to the problem, no, sir. That cannot be a solution. Because what came out of national dialogue is still ignoring the fact that we are supposed to be talking about two independent states and not one. The myth of Cameroon being one and indivisible is a fallacy. And you can see that, because if you cannot unify tribes, look at what happened in Sangmedima, what happened in Obala, what happened in Deedu here. You cannot unify tribes. How can you unify nations? It is not possible. We are talking about international juristic persons. Two states existed. Those two states were trust territories, and you cannot now claim that because one decided to join the other as an independent state, it has disappeared. No. It exists as an independent state, and the conditions of existence, of their common existence, is what is on the table today. The fighters in the bush are there to see to it that the independence is enjoyed. We want to say that the reason why the fighting cannot stop is that nobody wants to take the pains to explain that gentlemen who are in the bush, you say you are restoring your independence, but as of today, the independence is there. It was obtained in 1961. There is nothing that removed it. So all you need to do is sit on the dialogue table and see and determine with the other side the modus vivendi as is prescribed by Article 1605 in Article 5. That discussion cannot be obtained by the barrel of the gun. The fighting in the bush is therefore not necessary. I think enough lives have been lost. Today, the international community is aware of the problem, and whether we continue killing people ourselves or we stop killing, the problem is already out. It has to get a solution. My advice is that the killing should stop. The killing should stop. Let us go ahead and negotiate our living together with our brothers. That looks like a better solution to the war, because war is a far-fetched solution. The U.S. Undersecretary for Africa said, independence of Amazonia is not possible today. Because if you look at the way the independence was, it was subjected to union with Republic of Cameroon. Except you go back to the United Nations and have that cancelled. There is no possible independence without that union to Republic of Cameroon. So the independence that West Cameroon is supposed to enjoy is independence that can only be defined within the context of a confederation. We should open our eyes and stop dying for nothing. Let us make sure that we leave to our children a legacy that is tenable and sustainable. Thank you. As I earlier said, we are talking here about an independent state that has been swallowed up by another one. You see, instead of the Republic of Cameroon signing a union treaty with the Republic of West Cameroon or Southern Cameroon, they prefer to come up with some battered solution to say, okay, we'll give you autonomous status. We'll go back to the constitution. That autonomous status is within the context of a unitary state. Is that what the United Nations prescribed? That there should be a unitary state? The United Nations said two independent states living together. They did not say one should swallow up the other. That will become part of it and will get a backlash by nature of an autonomous region. So we think that a solution cannot come within the present context of a unitary state. The government of Cameroon cannot continue to ignore the fact that Southern Cameroon is an independent state. They shouldn't continue to ignore that. Because, as you can see, the international community is reminding them that there is a person there that you are not trying to see. There is a state whose opinion is needed. The problem today is that the institutions of Southern Cameroon are no longer there. We have that problem because on the table, we don't have, the government of Cameroon does not have a sparring partner, the other side. Who will talk for Southern Cameroon? That is the problem. Because the United Nations resolution said the government of Southern Cameroon. Today we don't have a government of Southern Cameroon. And I think in that light, if you want to create an autonomous region and make sure that that autonomous region is called West Cameroon or Southern Cameroon, well, then somehow you are rehabilitating that state. And if you have that state have the autonomy to elect its own leaders and run a government, then you have a sparring partner with whom you can discuss. But if that is not done, I'm sorry, the solution will still be far-fetched. You see, as I was explaining, if the reading of this crisis by the government of the Republic of Cameroon is correct, then the international community will not tell them today that your dialogue that just ended is a first step. I think the right reading is our humble reading, which is to the effect that the dialogue that just ended in Yaoundé is the dialogue by one of the two parties that are supposed to be on the table. It's an internal arrangement by one of the two parties. So the Yaoundé government should allow these West Cameroonians or Southern Cameroonians to organize themselves into a government that can discuss with it. If that is not possible, then we shall have to face the diaspora that is organizing itself in a government that has no legitimate authority from the people and want to force the Cameroon government to go negotiate with them, which unfortunately is what the international community is giving vent to. So I was saying that the possibility of an autonomous, not region, but autonomous Southern Cameroon or West Cameroon can give vent to the creation of, the putting in place of an authority, of a structure, a governmental structure that has legitimacy to talk. If the government has not understood that, then they should look at what the reactions that are coming in. You see, everybody is saying it is a first step. So which is the next step? They are all asking them to go to Switzerland. But I would say Switzerland is not the right door, sir. 1608 sub 5 says both parties plus the administering authority, which means that resolution prescribed the presence of Great Britain as the third party, not Switzerland. So they should better call Great Britain and sit with them and say, please mediate over this thing, because the agreement, in agreement with the administering authority, the agreement of Great Britain is imperative in this case. What will not be tenable in the eyes of the United Nations? So I think that that is the right thing for any person to do here. Let us go back to the drawing board, respect what was prescribed by the United Nations, bring to finality the reunification process. You see, this is very important. We cannot have a country that does not celebrate its independence because it has 2 days of independence, cannot celebrate reunification because the reunification was never finalized, and maintains 4 constitutions in application at the same time. It is not possible. This thing has to be finalized. We cannot continue having 2 national anthems, no. In a unitary state, one unitary state, 2 national anthems, 2 judicial systems. Who are we fooling? We are contradicting ourselves. We should come up with something that is tenable. I don't want to imagine a situation where, because I want the Prime Minister, that not attending to the legal issues that are being raised exposes this country, Cameroon, to further instability. Because if this thing were to go to the law courts, the solution will not be pleasant to everybody.